Greetings and salutations, ladies and distinguished gentlemen. We're going to be picking up right where we left off in the Dark Initiates, three men who changed the course of Hitler's life. I have with me some Arizona Arnold Palmer, so, I hopefully won't stutter as much now. Um, yeah, no, I'm going to just pick up right where we left off and continue the reading. All right. Three men who changed the course of Hitler's life. In 1919, Hitler met three men in Munich who, more than any others, profoundly shaped his thought and laid the foundations of his political career. All three were deeply involved in occult practices. The influence of Gottfried Feder, Dietrich Eckhart, and Alfred Rosenberg proved decisive in transforming him into the future leader of Germany. It began when Hitler attended a talk at the German Workers' Party on the 12th of September 1919. The speaker was Feder, and the subject of his talk was capitalism and its evils. There were only 54 members of the party, few of them present that evening. Hitler listened to Feder's talk with fascination and was strongly attracted to the new economic ideas that he put forward. During the questions that followed the speaker's lecture, a member of the audience demanded that the state of Bavaria should secede from the rest of Germany and restore its former monarchy. Hitler stood up angrily and engaged in a passionate defense of a greater Germany that included not only the states that already belonged to it, but also Austria, Danzig, and all of the German-speaking peoples. Having made his statement, he was about to make a rapid exit when the party leader, Anton Drexler, rushed after him and managed to get his address. He left the meeting but received a membership card in the post the following day. Drexler and Feder were both deeply impressed with Hitler's charisma, speaking ability, and strength of conviction. As Drexler remarked after hearing Hitler speak, "My God, he's got the gift of the gab, hasn't he? We could use him." As a result of the meeting, Hitler became the 55th member of the German Workers' Party and the 7th member of its committee, given special responsibility for propaganda. Before long, it had been renamed the National Socialist German Workers' Party, and Hitler became its leader. He was to transform it into a mass movement using, to a considerable extent, the occult training he had received from the dark initiates of the Thule Group and the Vril Society. Very few of the ideas that the future Chancellor of Germany put forward during his political career were original. His economic policies were almost entirely derived from Feder, and his anti-Semitism, still a relatively vague and incoherent prejudice before he met them, hardened into dogma as he swallowed the occult-based racial ideas of Eckhart and Rosenberg. Unlike Hitler, all three men came from a wealthy middle-class family, and they decisively changed the direction of Hitler's life and, as a result, the future of the history of the world through their ability to provide a more sophisticated justification for prejudices that, however deeply felt, had perhaps not been clearly formulated before. Dietrich Eckhart, Hitler's spiritual father. Eckhart knew that the German Workers' Party, even though he shared its beliefs, was incapable of ever becoming a mass movement without the right sort of persona as its leader. He said in the spring of 1919, before he had met Hitler, "We need a man at the head who can stand the sound of a machine gun. The best man for the job would be a worker who knows how to talk." Eckhart was obsessed with the imminent arrival of a strong leader who could not only restore Germany to its former greatness, but who would also make it the most powerful nation on earth. He was immediately struck by Hitler's potential and became convinced that the young Austrian ex-corporal was the Messiah for whom he and the whole of Germany were waiting. Hitler was not from the upper or middle classes, so he had the ability to speak to the working classes as one of their own. His charisma and ability as a public speaker was beyond question. Eckhart believed that Hitler could be molded into the future savior of Germany with sufficient training by himself and others who shared his view of the world. Eckhart nurtured Hitler carefully and initiated him into a range of occult ideas and practices. he introduced to him three magical orders: the Thule group, the Armanen Order, and the Vril Society. From them, Hitler learned the techniques of occult concentration, of visualization, and of developing the power to direct his will to influence events and other people. Eckhart firmly believed that he was in contact with the secret chiefs, mysterious beings who were variously thought to live in the air and in the mountain fastnesses of Tibet or in the very center of the earth. He thought he had the power to summon them and set them to work on behalf of Germany, and that Hitler was the earthly instrument for channeling their power. Kurt Ludeck was a close friend of Hitler's for many years and described Eckhart as something of a genius and, to a great degree, the spiritual father of Hitler and the grandfather of the Nazi movement. For his part, Eckhart told Rosenberg, "Let it happen as it will and must, but I believe in Hitler. Above him there hovers a star." Like Feder, Eckhart was deeply hostile to capitalism. Feder, at least at first, did not regard his anti-capitalist views as being necessarily connected with anti-Semitism. But Eckhart firmly believed that the Jews were masterminds behind capitalism. Through his paper, Auf gut Deutsch, and his authorship of a number of pamphlets, particularly the incendiary "To All Workers," he built a following amongst the thousands of Germans who felt dispossessed and alienated at the end of the First World War. Under Eckhart's influence, first Feder and then Hitler came to look on the Jews as the source of all the evils in the world. All right, I'm going to take a break to take a sip of my drink. Very good stuff. I love Arizona. I'm shamelessly plugging them right now, but I genuinely love them so much. The Thule group. The very beginnings of Nazism were steeped in occultism. The Nazi Party began life as the political arm of the Thule group. This was founded in 1910 by Felix Niedner, who also translated the Eddas from Old Norse into German. The Eddas being the sacred books of Scandinavian paganism. In 1918, a Munich branch was founded and became involved in political activity. The Thule group was formed on the ancient myths of Hyperborea and Thule. Hyperborea was supposed to be a land in the far north that was destroyed by ice. The ice split it into two islands, one of which became known as Thule. The Thule group were convinced that their descendants were the ancestors of the Aryan race. The group was one of the most important formative influences on Nazi thinking. Only the Vril Society had an equally decisive impact on the party's leadership. Eckhart was also obsessed with the idea of Reichskleinodien, the treasures of the Holy Roman Empire. My apologies if I'm mispronouncing or butchering these German words. I'm sorry. I'm not German. If you couldn't tell, it's kind of hard to read them. My apologies. The treasures of the Holy Roman Empire, in particular the crown and scepter, which had been part of the regalia of successive emperors. He was particularly keen on transferring the ownership of the Spear of Destiny to the possession of the Greater German Reich. In spite of his total hostility to both Christianity and Judaism, Eckhart was convinced that it was essential for the Nazis to acquire as many as possible of the sacred relics of both religions in order to harness their power. It was also Eckhart who introduced Hitler to the bizarre writings of the anti-Semitic Jew Otto Weininger, which provided additional occult justification for Aryan supremacism and anti-Jewish attitudes. Otto Weininger, the anti-Semitic Jew. Weininger was a Jewish psychologist who was deeply ashamed of his Jewishness. Like most other thinkers of his generation, he believed that the ethnic and national differences were inherent rather than culturally determined. In his book, Sex and Character, Weininger divided countries into what he referred to as masculine and feminine nations. People from the Mediterranean areas were regarded as female and Northern Europeans as male. In the same way he claimed that nations and racial groups were active or passive, Again, masculine nations were active and feminine ones passive. Naturally, Weininger saw the Germans as active and the Jews as passive. Not content with this dubious classification of nations and ethnic groups, Weininger added sexism to his racial prejudices. Women were condemned utterly as materialistic, passive, and feminine, while men were spiritual, active, and masculine. His suggestion that women were less spiritual than men represented a complete reversal of orthodox attitudes towards gender and spirituality. The core of Weininger's book was a polemic against feminine values and women in general. His notorious remark that the best woman is inferior to the worst man summed up his attitude towards them. Women were not only seen as inferior to men, but also as not even fully human at all. There were no value in themselves and only acquired an instrumental value in the terms of their ability to serve men. Weininger declared that Jews were inferior even to women, since women believed in men, but Jews believed in nothing. Jews were completely unable to live their lives upon spiritual principles and were the incarnation of the spirit of decadent materialism. This tendency made them the natural enemies of the German people. Weininger wrote, "The human race awaits the founder of a new religion, and the struggle approaches its crucial phase, as in the first year of our era. Once again, humanity has the choice between Judaism and Christianity, between commerce and culture, between woman and man. But the species and individual, between non-value and value, between nothingness and divinity. There is no third kingdom." As with Hitler and many other Nazis, Weininger saw race not simply in biological terms, but also as representing spiritual values. He declared that Judaism was a tendency of the intellect, a psychic condition which could appear in any man, but whose greatest historical manifestation was in historical Jerusalem. Weininger also believed that the German race represented the highest expression of spiritual values. This tormented, self-hating Jew influenced thinkers of the stature of Wittgenstein and Freud. For all the irrationality of his prejudices against women and Jews, he roundly condemned anti-Semitism and wrote, "The most genuine Aryans, those who are most Aryan and most sure of their Aryanism, are not anti-Semites. On the other hand, the aggressive anti-Semite can always detect certain Jewish traits even though his blood is free from any Semitic strain. That is why the most violent anti-Semites are Jews." A year after converting to Christianity, Weininger committed suicide. His work, Sex and Character, was a popular and influential book that was widely praised. Two of its biggest admirers were Eckhart and Alfred Rosenberg, a man whose decisive influence on Hitler will be examined shortly. Eckhart introduced Hitler to Weininger's book, and the future chancellor was deeply impressed. In his Table Talk, Hitler described Weininger as the only Jew fit to live. All right, that sums up this section of Chapter 1. I will pick up on Alfred Rosenberg, the Nazi Party ideologist, and we will resume from there. See you again soon. Goodbye.